As you know, my background is that I was in ministerial school and I became a unity minister. And I then, during my first year as a unity minister, I did this talk 10 months in. I had only been there for 10 months. And I did this talk on not complaining, and I gave out the complaint-free bracelets, and my whole life changed. My whole life changed as a result of that. When we were in ministerial school, one of the things that they used to do, and I don't know if they do anymore, in fact, I don't think they do, was that you had graduating classes so that you were with the same people in all the same classes, and then you graduated as a group and ideally were ordained as a group. And one of the things they wanted to do was to take us out and show us very successful field ministries. Now, there are a number of successful unity ministers in the Washington, D.C. area, so it was decided that we would go to Washington, D.C. While we were there, they had one of the biggest blizzards. I think at that point it was the third biggest blizzards in the history of D.C. There were snowdrifts 4 feet high. So basically, we were restricted to what we could do on foot. One of the things that we did was we went to the National Gallery, and one of my classmates had actually volunteered there as a docent when he lived in Washington, D.C. And so there were a few things that he really wanted me to see. And it was so great. I mean, imagine going into the National Gallery and having somebody who knows the place so well is like, you've just got to see these things. And one of the things that he took me to see was the series of paintings by Thomas Cole called The Voyage of Life. Now, you can see the image here in the thumbnail if you look at it, and you will see this is the very first in the series. There are actually 4 paintings. They hang not only in the National Gallery, the originals are somewhere else, I forget. The ones in the National Gallery, Cole actually painted the series again, and they are on display at the National Gallery. I think it is, to say this is a metaphor for life is overstating the obvious, but I think there's some beautiful things we can really learn from this. So let me tell you a little bit about the series, and then we're going to begin this 4-part series today, JumpStarting Childhood. Each image in the series all have, and by the way, these are hanging on my wall in my living room, not the originals, of course. But I found a company that does replicas of famous paintings, and they'll even put them in beautiful, expensive frames. So I bought them one by one over a period of about a year because they were expensive just to get the replicas. But the elements that are in each one of the paintings are first and foremost the Voyager. Now, looking at the thumbnail might be a little hard to see, but there is a little tiny smiley baby facing forward in the boat. And in the boat is also a guardian angel. The guardian angel is in each one of the paintings. So is the boat, so is the baby, so is the river, and so is the landscape. Now, the landscape changes. It goes through an evolution. Something that I found in my research about the paintings is that it is supposed to be Middle America in the mid-1900s. The challenge I find with that is some of the trees look a little tropical for me. So maybe fauna was quite different back during Cole's days, but it doesn't matter. The bottom line is it's supposed to be a different season in the life of a human being, and the seasons change in the paintings. So let's start with childhood. By the way, one thing I noticed and I want to share with you that a lot of people missed, I myself missed until I did the research, is that it all begins with the baby coming out of the tunnel. Okay, so it's birth, obviously, coming out of the darkness into the light, coming out of nothingness into beingness. And yet, even coming into life, we have a guardian angel. We have something that is watching over us. It is always there. It never goes away, no matter what happens. Now, when I say things like this, I get attacked. And I understand where you are coming from. When I say things like this, people say, well, what do you say about the people who are beaten and abused, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? I'm not saying that life is fair. I'm saying that we all have a being. We all have a spiritual connection. We all have a connection to that which is good. Unfortunately, some of the people who come into our lives lead very, very hard lives. You might look at it and say that George Floyd is a martyr, and his very passing is changing the life of our society. So when you look at this, you have to kind of look at it from a universal sense. And the other thing is to remember that this was painted in the 1800s, 1845, if I'm not mistaken. And when Cole painted these, of course, women were almost considered property, were basically considered property. And so when he says manhood, etc., let's interpret in our own heads and go with adulthood, because that's what we know. But as the Voyager comes out of the cave, the river zigzags. It is not a straight line. As you can see, the baby is coming out from left to right in the images I'm looking at it, and perhaps I'm sure as you're looking at it as well. So you would think that in the next image, which you'll see tomorrow, the Voyager would be moving from left to right. It does not. He moves from right to left. So it just shows how life zigzags. So we're starting with childhood. You ask most people, would you go back and be a teenager again? And I've never had anybody, well, maybe 2 or 3 people go, oh yeah, I'd love to go back and be a teenager. In most cases, people are like, are you kidding me? I would never want to go back and be a teenager. Childhood, unless you had an abusive childhood, most people would love to go back, I think, and relive childhood. Because when you're a child, everything is new and magical. When I got Teddy, he was a puppy. He was 8 weeks old. He was just this little bouncing ball of fluff. And one of the things that I loved about bringing Teddy into my life was seeing him see literally everything on the planet as brand new. I mean, my other dog, Jake, was 5 years old when I got him from a rescue center. And he had seen a lot of things, but Teddy had not seen anything. And it was such a joy to watch him and to watch him without expectations. And, that's one of the reasons you have to watch children. I forget who it was. It was it was Wayne Dyer. He said for the first 2 years of a child's life, your job is basically to keep them from accidentally killing themselves because they don't know what is good and bad, what can hurt them and what can help them. They just want to experience everything. The other thing about children is that they are not concrete thinkers, they are concrete thinkers, not abstract thinkers. And so to them, they cannot think of abstract concepts, but they live in a world of abstraction. For example, I have 2 really favorite pictures of me and my daughter, Leah. And they're both at amusement parks, and they're both during heavy rainstorms. We went to Six Flags when she was 4 years old in Atlanta, and then we went to Disney World when she was like 22, something like that. And in both cases, we got just pounded by rain, but we didn't let it stop us. In both cases, we bought ponchos and continued to make a day of it. Now, in those pictures, it takes me back to that time. And when we were at Six Flags, we walked out of a gate that was different from the gate that we had walked into. Now, mind you, Leah's 3, maybe 4 years old, maybe 5. I don't think she's 5, but she's 4 or 5. Anyway, we walk out of a different gate. We can't find our car. Six Flags over Georgia is huge. We can't find our car. So we start looking and doing our best, and we didn't remember where we had parked it. We hadn't looked, and so Leah tells me she's going to solve the whole problem. Little 4-year-old is going to send up her flying horse, Tumo, that was his name, who was going to find the car and let us know. And she was very serious about this. There was no joking in her mind. This was very real in her mind. There were so many possibilities, whereas we as adults walk around saying, I can't find my car. That's what we say. I can't find my car. She was looking, at least in her imagination. Children are open to possibilities because everything is new. For us, we've seen it, we've done it, and unfortunately, and I'm going to say this as loudly as I can, unfortunately, I think one of the things we consider to be a mark of adulthood is cynicism. We've seen it all, we know it all, we don't trust anything, we don't trust anybody, etc. Why? Because we've had our hearts broken, we've had our money stolen, we've had people be rude and mean to us, we've had things happen. And yet that little child inside of you, where everything is fresh and new and wonderful, is still there. It's still there. We need to push aside the cynicism and begin to develop the eyes of the child, to see things as new, and to see things, ultimately, as good. Here's what I mean. About a month ago, there was a meme that was being tweeted around, and it was of a young, and by that I mean probably 3-year-old Caucasian boy running down a street with an equal-aged, probably 3-year-old African-American boy chasing him down the street. And some people were saying that this was going to be misinterpreted as a black person chasing a white person down the street. It was racist, doesn't even begin to describe this. The interesting thing was the father who had actually taken this video then posted the real video. And what was lifted, well, let me just tell you the real video. In the real video, it shows the two boys about 50 feet away from each other on a city sidewalk. And they realize that they are very near one another, and they begin to run in their floppy little 3-year-old way with their arms like this to hug one another and their feet just stamping along the ground. And they get together and give each other such a genuine, loving, appreciative hug. And they just squeeze each other. And then they turn and they run down the street. And that's where the video is edited and given a racist context. Children aren't racist. Children are taught to be racist. Children aren't afraid. Children are taught to be afraid. So today, consider unlearning some of the cynicism, to be open to the love and the beauty and the goodness and the newness that's around you. Today is the first Monday of this week. Today's the first day of the rest of your life. Is that irritating, overused, trite poster from the 60s and 70s said? Nonetheless, it's true. You can be a child today. You can set aside things. You can be hopeful and expectant rather than worrisome and dreading. This is the day the Lord has made. Rejoice and be glad in it, just like a child. Our complaint-free meditation group is going to be getting together and meditating live in just about 10 minutes, in exactly 10 minutes. This is the image and the music that we will be meditating to. The music was created specially for our group by our wonderful friend Alex Cordero. And we are going to be looking at a beautiful ocean scene today. So be sure and check out. If you have any questions or comments, now's your opportunity to address anything I've said this morning. Again, if you're a first-timer, let us know. And if you haven't shared this message yet, be sure and share it with others, because we want to get them with us in this series. So that tomorrow we'll be talking about youth. This morning we talk about the first painting, which is childhood. Tomorrow we talk about youth. Hey, good morning. First time watching live. Marianne, great to have you here. And everybody's saying, good morning, good morning. I've been away. Lisa, we've noticed. Glad to see this live. Glad to have you back. And glad to have all of you with us here this morning. It's a Monday. Make it a safe day. Stay safe. Wear a mask. Socially distance. Physically distance. I got to keep reminding myself, never socially distance. Socially reach out. Physically reach out. Okay? Be a child today. Have the audacity to believe. I remember one time I was going through such a really, really, really rough time in my life. I'm pausing because I'm going through one now, which is true. But that's kind of true for all of us, isn't it? We're all going through a heavy load. And I remember thinking at that point in my life that I would make it, that I would make it. I asked a friend of mine, how am I going to get out of this? And he said, you know what? I absolutely see no way out of it. I hadn't done anything wrong, but it was when the church was coming after me, as they had done with 4 other ministers, trying to throw me out just like they did with 4 others. And I remember thinking, yeah, there is a way. My friend kept saying, there's no way out of this. You're going to have this, it's going to be mean and nasty. And it just didn't really have to be that way. So there's always another option in the childlike side of you, not the childish, childlike. Be childlike today. Open and receptive, not childish, petulant. All right, everybody, I will see you live meditating in our Complaint-Free Life group in 7 minutes. If you haven't checked out Complaint-Free Meditation, go to complaintfreemeditation.com. And I love you all. See you tomorrow. We'll talk about youth.
No more complaining people. Their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more, no more.